Happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all have had a great weekend. We are back with another interesting topic. I'm Yogesh Pandit, CEO and founder of Exanica. And today we have come up with a topic around the OSC Enforcement Branch document, what to expect and where should your focus be. And to discuss this topic, we have a great guest. Her name is Pat Dunwoody, and she's a client and relationship focused executive with in-depth background in all the aspects of the investment fund industry. She has spent almost 35 years in financial services industry and is currently the executive director of the Canadian ETF Association, as well as supporting other organizations as they grow. She was named the ETF Champion of the Year for 2021 by the Wealth Professional Awards, and she was also recently recognized as one of the top 50 most influential in the industry. She has been an active member on many various committees, including co-chair of the first Industry Standards Committee, participation of FundServe committees from the day FundServe was launched, and currently is a member of their Standards Steering Committee and Canadian Capital Markets Association's committees as well. Now, when it comes to topic, the enforcement branch of the Ontario Securities Commission has released a guidance intended to provide transparency regarding the enforcement branch's enforcement practices. These resources are intended to facilitate cooperation and efficient investigation. And the new resources provided added transparency on the process, timelines that individuals and companies can expect when interacting with the enforcement staff, as well as staff's expectation of those involved in the assessment and investigation. Now, recently, OSC came up with this enforcement branches document around production guidance, and there are various aspects within the guidance. It speaks about the way the document records should be collected, formatted, and submitted, and various other aspects. And again, here to speak about all this, I'm going to ask a few questions to Pat. First of all, Pat, welcome. Happy Monday to you as well.
Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you for having me.
So, Pat, a very open-ended question. Could you give some highlights on what is this change about, and if you have any initial thoughts on the document?
Sure. I guess the data noted in the guidance document, which for those that want to look it up is the OSC Notice 15708, the data was always required, but until the paper was published last month, people and companies that were required to send it produced the data and just sent it into the OSC in the format that they felt was appropriate. And this was for investigations, assessments, anything that the OSC was looking for. The guidance document is aiming to enhance the efficiency by standardizing how everything is collected and forwarded to the OSC. And this is totally understandable given the huge amount of data and the variety of formats that's now used in business. And it makes it really difficult for the regulators to bring everything together to have a complete view of the situation. And I think it's also difficult for the firm or individual to produce everything needed to ensure the accuracy of the situation and at the same time maintain client privacy.
Sure. And recently there was a Gartner report on the regulations, RegTech across the industry, and that report was precisely mentioning the same aspect that regulators now want more data at faster pace. And to that extent, given all these changes, are there any further guidelines, or what do you think are the sentiments of the regulators, and what are they going to do with this?
So within the paper, there are very specific guidelines offered based on every specific type of document or data required. So when the documents are produced, they, as requested, it's going to reduce time and cost and resources for the OSC staff and the company involved, because they've made it very clear that if you don't produce it in the recommended fashion, staff may ask you to either reproduce the records or produce the device on which the records are stored. So I think it's in everybody's best interest to follow the guidance as it's laid out. And everything for an investigation is required. And this includes, you can see the list on the screen: electronic records, client documents, audio records, text, videos, bank statements, whatever either the firm and or the regulator believes it is required to do a complete investigation. They even need to collect information from others who may have information that will assist the investigation, but not under investigation. So it is awkward to come up with a process to handle each document the same way, hence why they've gone through a different process for each. Each document has to be saved in a different format with appropriate meta tags. And I was looking for examples to try to explain this, and there were two, although they're from IROC, I think it helps explain it. There was one enforcement report from IROC with the firm being fined $500,000 for failure to supervise the activities of two advisors. So the data required to investigate that would be client trading history, the supervision of trades, KYC, pricing history of some of the products on multiple pricing systems, emails, and possibly social media. Another example is a firm that was fined $130,000 for not supervising employees outside accounts. And the data required here, again, would be from the transfer agency and compliance systems, but also social media. In both of these examples, the multiple systems and data sources would make it almost impossible for a firm without a system to gather all of the appropriate data and send it into the regulator, because they could be collecting things that are PDF, Word documents, and just raw data. And so if they want to make sure that the story that's in the right sequence, so that they get their information across accurately, it could be really difficult. And I know we've, in previous conversations, Yogesh, we've talked about other regulators, and I know there's some in the US, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Fed Reserve. They're already asking for this level of data. So all of the regulators are going to be asking for it sooner than later. And I think this is the only way to ensure a full analysis can be done and appropriate action taken. It's beneficial to both sides, for sure.
Sure. And Pat, I was recently reading the enforcement report of the 2020-2021. And in that report, Charles Corlett, who's the Vice President of the Enforcement Division, he in his letter is clearly saying that as part of the IRROC's 3-year strategic plan, the institution will continue its effort to seek new ways of enforcement to address wrongdoings fairly and appropriately. So there is clear indication from the regulators, the leaders in regulators across the board. And in addition to that, you have also explained the fines, and I think this is just start of where the regulators are going. Not only they are asking for more information, but they themselves are becoming more intelligent with advanced technologies and other aspects, so that the enforcement action will also become much more, I would say, intelligent than what it used to be. So very, very interesting. Given all these things, what do you think financial institution should do? How they should think about it, and what are the things that perhaps they can plan in advance, given the direction of all these enforcement actions, guidelines, and other information?
I think for those financial institutions that aren't able to collect the information now, They have to adopt innovative technologies and automate the processes to be able to consume all forms of data and documents required. There's various firms and technologies available now, and I think adoption of one of those is critical. This is going to make the analysis and reviews go so much more quickly. But if you don't have the capabilities, or your current outsource providers aren't able to create the documents that you need, you have to look for a solution that does, and plan ahead. Because I really don't think you want to be in a position to have to figure out how to gather the data at the time you're asked for it by the regulators. You need to be comfortable to know that you can be able to collect it when asked for it. And I believe too that this is a perfect solution for internal audits. So build the process so that you can do your internal audits way ahead of when you're actually, if you're ever asked for it by the regulator. It just makes a lot of sense. In the Gardner report you mentioned earlier, it showed that financial institutions have underinvested in risk management system, which I believe this is part of. And they have to change their processes from the after the fact compliance to real-time supervision. And I think that sort of says it all, that you have to be monitoring this. You can't just be gathering data after the fact and seeing the issues. And tie this with the regulators' desire for more information and more data and faster than you've ever had to provide it before. It's essential that firms have to prepare. Absolutely.
A very interesting, Pat, the dimension that you gave in this answer. Essentially, what you're saying is not only think from regulatory compliance standpoint, but add a component of risk management, add a component of audit, all that together. And perhaps to that, you added the technology component where use artificial intelligence and many such technologies that are available that can consume this unstructured data. And then the other piece is solutions that will give you better transparency, better data lineage, auditability across the regulation, from the original data sets to the submissions to the regulators. And don't wait for it. Your underpinning, I think, statement is don't wait for it, be proactive. Don't that effect, what are the, if at all, I mean, you have described, but the top 2 or 3 challenges given these changes across multiple regulators within Canada and US, is it the pace of change? Is it implementation of change? Is it technology, operation, process, people? What do you think are the top 2 or 3 challenges given all this?
I think the first one is really just the vast scope of the data required that's noted in this guidance. I think in the past, firms have just felt that they needed to send in the client documents and maybe data from their transfer agency system, where the regulators have made it very clear that they are going beyond that. If you're dealing with clients, inappropriate products in a client account, for example, they want to see any conversation and or email leading up to the decision for that decision on product. So I don't think firms have ever had to gather information from email and embedded, documents embedded in email, social media, phone records, videos, all of those things, especially during the COVID era, that it's all online. They've never had to be able to collect that to show the entire process. And so that's going to be daunting for them to try to figure out how to put that puzzle together. And I think knowing a lot of the firms in the industry, I think one of the other biggest decisions or issues that they're going to have is finding or building a solution. They have to make the decision whether they want to build or buy, which is typical, but they have to do it soon. They don't have the luxury of a lot of time. And I think they need to do a cost benefit analysis, but not just for the risk and the compliance piece, but also look at it as the way of managing their business better going forward. But that decision has to be made quickly, and we're not known for quick decision making in this industry. So I think that will be a real challenge for firms. So
rather pay for making technology better than the fines, right? Or wasting time on explaining and auditing and all that. I completely agree with you.
And
Yeah.
And Dan, tied to that too, just the avoidance of any negative press, right? You
Reputation.
want to avoid being in one of those reports showing the fines. So
Yeah.
you don't want to have a reputational hit.
Yeah. Recently, ACC has also proposed new rules. They are actually waiting for comments. The comment period is on the changes that they are making. CFTC has also approved two final rules, and there are two proposed rules at the in June 25th. So that is also changed. So given all these changing dimensions, I think the firms in North America need to be updated. So if you have any questions on these changes, the impact of these changes, I will highly recommend to reach out to Pat. So Pat, thank you very much. This was awesome discussion. And perhaps, in a couple of months, 3 months, as this becomes much more clearer, we should have a touch point with the audience, letting them know that what are the outcomes of these comments and changes, and if there is more clarity. So thank you for that. If you have any questions on operations, process, technology, feel free to reach out to me or anybody in Hexanica. We are happy to have a brainstorming session with you. But this was an excellent overview of the changes, the impact of the changes, and some of the actions that regulators have already started taking. So Pat, if you have any closing comments, thank you very much for being with us. But please share your closing comments, and would love to have a session with you in 2-3 months. Please, Pat, to you.
I think firms really need to take a hard look at the data that's being used by the firm and the advisors and come to a decision soon on how they want to be able to collect it, and appreciate that they're going to have to reach into areas that they've never done before in terms of social media. So they're going to have to get expertise to be able to do that.
Excellent. Pat, thank you again. Have a great week ahead. And
Thank
everybody,
you.
I hope you enjoyed this session, and we look forward to talking to you about this topic very soon. Thank you. Have a great week.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.